I consider ourselves a carbon-based life form, and I consider AI a silicon-based life form. We need food and water to survive. It needs power and data to survive.
AI is now literally in our zeitgeist. It's all around us. And man, tell you what, it's really efficient, and it's wildly creative for me. It opens up my creative vessel. I don't see it as doing things for me.
I believe artificial intelligence will easily be the biggest conversation of our lifetime. One of the biggest issues, I suppose, is everyone thinks that artificial intelligence is search. We might be thinking of a tool or a chat GPT. A lot of people just refer to that as a synonym, and it's not. It has the capacity and capability based on the data and knowledge that it has to make decisions and inferences from that data. That's intelligence. That's what we have.
Welcome to SuperLife with me, Darren O'Lean, a podcast where we explore, discover, and share solutions that promote a healthier life and a better world. Together, we'll ignite possibilities, inspire change, and build sovereignty, creating a roadmap towards a super life for you and for all. Get ready to start living your super life. Well, dude, thanks for coming here. Full circle, another full circle. You started me in podcasting. You urged me to do it. You realize it's 4 years. 4 years. Like it popped up on LinkedIn. People were like congratulating me on 4 years of podcast. I was like, what?
I remember very clearly the conversation on the phone, because I was at a riverside with you in January saying, trust me, please launch this. We've already got like 6 recordings or something we had. Mm-hmm. And you were like, oh, I don't know whether we should go ahead. But I remember so clearly that conversation. And I think about that a lot as well, because I see every new episode come up, right? And it's like, wow, it almost didn't exist.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's full on work for sure.
Yeah.
When you're putting out 2 episodes a week, now I just do solos, answer questions, and then having a guest, and then you have all the advertising. In order to make it a business,
yeah,
it requires a lot of. But yeah, thank you for that prompt. And, at the end of the day, the pureness of it, the sitting down to have conversation and connecting, that's, like you said, way back then. He goes, that's the... And I already knew I had a propensity of liking that, It's just, as anything, you can't halfway do it.
Yeah.
You get a full... And the first year plus, not making any money whatsoever. Like, it's just an investment, and... But then as anything, it builds and it evolves, and and it's the next thing you know, life just blinks by.
When you think about the podcast, apart from the money aspect, what else did it do? Because in general, the podcast does this platform thing, which allows you to meet other people, but also have a way that when distribution hits, you get that audience that starts to like consume some of your work.
Yeah.
Which, how has that been?
I think the surprising feature through the ups and downs of life, the success of the show, that show ending, building another one, the success of formulation thing dropping with, some sales of some certain money coming. This weirdly and beautifully has become a solid financial situation for me. And I did not expect that. And it's taken time, but it's become an anchor which it was surprising from a business perspective and a financial perspective. And then I think it's just such a great excuse to have conversation in this world, in this kind of, when there's a mutual benefit. I get to meet people, I get to talk to peers and colleagues, they get to promote things that they are passionate about.
100%.
Right? So we get this witness.
Yeah.
We get this witness to then share that.
Right.
And in this day and age, with the fast moving social side of it, it's almost like this maintains itself and potentially grows itself almost as an antidote for the fast pace. This long form communication is still here and people are still consuming, and many are still popping up. So you can make this argument like, okay, fast TikTok reels, blah, 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 blah. But then you go like, well, this is old fashioned radio.
Yeah.
It's still here.
I think what's happening is people do not want to give their attention and time to something that they might not enjoy. So they don't end up doing that. And that's why the reels become important, because it gives them the snippets to go, yeah, I'll invest time in that. And that's basically the crux of that piece. But also to your point about conversation, with social media and how digitized the world is going, we are having an issue with connection. We are having an issue with having these conversations. We are having an issue being uncomfortable, disagreeing, seeing another perspective.
Right.
And doing this art form not only helps us be in this space, but it also gives others the permission, by witnessing this, to your point of what witness, at some point when they're ready and have the courage, they can do the same. So that's the way I feel. And that's why I feel so strongly about this medium. And, for the longest time, I love everything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're still very active in it, which I'm glad to hear. And, but I want to talk about like you're pivoting. You're constantly pivoting. And we're going to get into an area that I haven't talked about publicly with AI and how we can leverage that. And you're writing, finishing a new book, essentially on the ethics of AI and looking at things we should be eyes wide open about ahead of time. And I never even thought I would be in these conversations, but AI is now literally in our zeitgeist. It's all around us. And man, tell you what, it's really efficient and it's wildly creative for me. And when I have an idea and I am prompting the idea and I'm extrapolating using the leverage of AI, it opens up my creative vessel. I don't see it as doing things for me, maybe menial things like, hey, put this in a paragraph, in a blog post. But the ability to ask questions. Anyway, so we can dive down that rabbit hole, but talk to me about, from your perspective, and then we can kind of, to whatever degree you want to talk about what you're writing in the book, but pros and cons, what you're seeing. You're working with some prominent people in the space using AI, leveraging certain things. You're an entrepreneur of magnitude. You always have been. And so you always find yourself, my perception of you is you always find yourself kind of at that tipping point of what's going on in a certain sense. And now, because we were out of touch for a little bit, and all of a sudden you were like full on AI and understood it like it was like your cousin, right? So give me your just top level thoughts on AI in general, and then let's just
Sure.
dive in a little bit.
There's a lot to unpack here, of course, because I believe artificial intelligence will easily be the biggest conversation of our lifetime. And that's why I'm glad that we're having this conversation. And I encourage everyone else to have the conversation, not from a place of ignorance, but from a place of knowing. So, as much as you can, involve yourself in the conversation of AI and understand how it works. So, one of the biggest issues, I suppose, is everyone thinks that artificial intelligence is search, maybe because there's so much of Google search that has been happening over the last decade and more, 15, 20 years. It's been search information, search information. And even one of my recent posts, like yesterday, I posted this meme about one conversation I had with ChatGPT, and these comments, one after the other, saying how the model has bugs. And I'm like, the AI model can't have bugs. This is not a software program you're talking about. This is a large language model. And for your listeners to understand this in the way I see it, because I feel like I'm Neo in the Matrix. I'm like, please see what I'm seeing. I consider ourselves a carbon-based life form, and I consider AI a silicon-based life form. We need food and water to survive. It needs power and data to survive.
And we're going to tackle that side of it, which is very important to tackle.
Yeah. And when we are thinking about artificial intelligence, we might be thinking of a tool or a chat GPT. A lot of people just refer to that as a synonym, and it's not. Artificial intelligence means that the machine can think for itself. It has the capacity and capability based on the data and knowledge that it has to make decisions and inferences from that data. That's intelligence. That's what we have. And now what's happening is we have to understand that there can be a point, and there will be a point, when it will start thinking for itself and also be sentient for itself. And if we start to train it on our current ways of thinking, I'm talking about the first world, the colonial ways of thinking, where I have to capture this land belongs to me.
Profit, power, et cetera, et cetera.
I have to get into AI because I want to leave my competitors in the dust. I want to, outperform. That way of thinking has to change, because if we don't change and we don't move to a more collaborative, a more indigenous, a more holistic, a more ancient way of being, we might not be around as a species.
I think that's such an important point to really understand. And I'm going to back up to my epiphany. When I started talking with Pavel and Hunter and all these guys, the moment where it was like, oh, it's how you use everything. So it's how you use AI, it's how you use electricity, it's how you use the internet. There's a lot of people using electricity to harm. Hell, we've electrocuted people, right? Killed people with the same things that are putting light on our face right now. The internet's got a dark, gnarly side of it. It's got pornography, it's got trafficking, it's got horrible things that you can access right now, pretty much everyone. How do you use that? And at the same time, it's got amazing information. That was the epiphany for me, going, oh, if I use this in the way that I believe is the highest version of assistance to us in the actualization of our greater self as this assistant assisting us, then that to me was like, okay, cool. And now what you're saying now is that all these forms of, you could call it in forms of colonialism, you can call it, you know, the world war machines, you could call it for power and domination and capital and, you know, dominance. You could call the industrial healthcare
Yep.
system. You could say the same thing.
Right.
Let's suppress natural methods of healing. So those inherently are divorced of natural principles,
Yep.
supporting humans,
Right.
supporting life, supporting the environment.
Right.
It's divorced of that.
Yep.
Inherently, I believe in the greater vision that has to implode.
Yep.
Hopefully, we're here to see the implosion and the inversion of that into something utopian, et cetera. So I just wanted to kind of make that distinction, because there will be people that will use AI for horrible, horrific things.
So in the book, one of the first sections in the first chapter is the map of consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins. And the point I'm trying to make is it depends on what we as a human and our environment and the people around us are vibrating at for us to look at any event. Let's break it down into me getting up from this chair and getting a cup of coffee from the next door. Depending on where you're vibrating, if you're vibrating at a place of fear, you'll see that same event differently to when you're vibrating at a place of reason, or at love, or at happiness, or at courage, or at pain, or in guilt. There's so many different ways you can interpret the same action.
Right.
And that awareness in itself will be massive for how we can use artificial intelligence. And I want to clarify that it is not a tool. I would like your audience and you to think about it as an augmentation of intelligence. We are augmenting our intelligence with artificial intelligence, and hopefully we can align it with divine intelligence for greater good. So when we have this like triad of intelligence that comes, where we're using our intelligence and we know that there's certain things we're not good at. For example, when we say this person has an IQ of 150, what we're saying is that this person...
Thank you.
What we're saying is that this person can hold a lot of memory when they're thinking about something. So that's why they have a high IQ. But artificial intelligence can do that right now. So you can augment your intelligence to artificial, remember all the things that are hard, and then you can do just the thing that is so important that you're not wasting your energy on all the hard stuff. And you can just augment that, and you can save your cognitive load for the most important parts.
Yeah, no, I think that is, and one could make the, playing the devil's advocate, we want a liberal arts kind of intelligence. We want to also stress ourselves enough to learn things it's good cognitively to learn things and to try things. And so where do you wrestle with that? Like, because you could essentially, if I were to go to school today and there was no policing, they couldn't find a way to police AI, I could kick out every paper with AI. I could every assignment.
But that doesn't matter anymore. That's what I'm trying to say. That intelligence that we think is IQ on the planet, because we see, as humans, what we did was we outsourced what I thought of you based on your IQ. And then we outsourced the IQ to what job you had or what profession you were. If you were a doctor, you're like, oh, let's revere this person. You might be the dick. of a person.
Yeah.
But because you're a doctor, well, let's respect you for a little bit until you prove us wrong, right?
Yeah.
And that also has happened recently. We've taken a lot of, bad personalities who have shown some promise on the planet, and we want to change that. And that's the point I'm trying to make is we all have this. We can right now solve for the last person, which is what the huge advantage of artificial intelligence is rather than us drain ourselves trying to figure out how our principles and frameworks will apply to this particular person and personalize it for them, we can just delegate that to artificial intelligence at speed, which is the power of it right now.
Let's do an experiment right now.
Yeah.
Because you kind of got me thinking. So one of my big frustrations is seeing a lot of the world, seeing a lot of the billions of people still suffering. Hell, you go down the street, people don't even literally don't have access to good food, right? It's highly processed. But moreover, you have people in the world that don't even know what clean water looks like. You have people in the world that don't have access to healthy food. You have people in the world that are living in a very challenging situation. And then I think of the organizations that, on the one hand, piss me off, like the UNs. Again, there's great people in those organizations. I don't mean to be flippant in saying all people within that organization are a certain thing.
Right.
But it's just frustrating to me when I've been, in Africa, in India, trying to create clean water initiatives and blah, blah, blah. And then why the hell am I here? Why do I have to be here in order to see this and to solve this particular problem in this village?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this still happening to our human family? So if I were to take, I don't know, there's 17 goals of the UN, right?
Yeah.
And
global goals. Yeah.
Yeah. If I were to take them and dump them into the AI,
Yeah.
and have the super brain come up with a systematic ability for us to actually solve these things.
Yeah.
That's a good source of, I think, use, or good use of that. And then obviously you have to follow that up. You have to create action plans. You got to create all that stuff. But let's solve these freaking issues. So anyway, that's what it gets me. That's immediately where I going, and you can make quote unquote money. People can have careers creating change that's good. It doesn't mean you need to be a martyr and have nothing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's economic models that can be built in for people to create the bridges for billions of people who are not where we are at.
Yeah.
And to bridge that into a different reality.
Yeah.
That to me is just like, why wouldn't we?
Well, at the start of this conversation, you said to me that I was always at this tipping point at the edge of everything. And I feel like my whole life, all I've done in every different field is bring together two opposing sides. Podcasting, for example, was seen as a hobby. And I brought the business side of that and I made it a thing. When I had the restaurant, I brought together Indian spices and Portuguese flavors. When I wrote my thesis, I did rigid quality processes versus agile, and I brought agile quality methods to rigid quality processes. And after I wrote my thesis, there's now regular annual conferences on that. And it's just been a trend my whole life. I was the sports guy that played all the sports for the school and was the captain of the debate team, elocution team, did all those things, right? And I feel like this is another one of them. This is like training to get to this point where it is the combination of all these elements. When you think about artificial intelligence, it's neurology, psychology, computer science, physics, maths. There's like 9 or 10 different fields that have to come together to give this the specialization. So when we are privileged, in a privileged position where we get to stop and have this conversation and think and have the two perspectives or the multiple perspectives and be in comfort to think about that, the logical next step is only fair to do something about that, right? And what you're talking about in terms of change, I think about a lot. And I didn't want to get into the AI game. I was a podcast guy and I spent a lot of time and effort and energy to be the podcast guy. And I didn't want to be the AI guy. And there's a lot of days today that I don't think I should be the AI guy. However, when I look at the combination of my careers and this point of being able to program in 21 languages, taking 2 companies to ISO 9001 accreditation, which is all process and quality, writing a thesis on agile methods, and then having a 15-year entrepreneurship career on top of that with podcasting and helping over 1,100 businesses and brands in the last 12 years start and create a podcast. Like you see that and you go, this might be what I'm meant to do. I might not have a choice in the matter anymore, which I don't think I do. I feel like this is just my purpose. It's nothing other than that. And
which is what? What is your purpose today?
I want us to use AI for good. I want us to understand the ethical implications, and I feel like entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders are the ones that can make that change. Not only make that change, but also communicate that change to others. So that's why the book is an ethical framework on how businesses can grow using AI. And the parameters, when you think about it, are very, very simple. Does it solve meaningful problems? Is it diverse? Is it basic? Is it accessible to everyone? Does it reduce human cognitive load? Like there are these simple things that once you have those in play, you know, because what can happen on the flip side is a brand will adopt AI and has built all this reputation and trust in the market and might not think of the ethical implications, adopt AI and ruin all the branding and trust you've built in the marketplace as a result of this without even thinking about what effect it's going to have.
So as an average person, now maybe there's a bunch of entrepreneur people and maybe there's a bunch of people running their household.
Yeah, of course.
And high performing people. And first off, what's the biggest challenge you see right now with AI?
That everyone thinks that it's this magic trick, that it should give me these results. It should give me what I have in my head. And by the way, that's the biggest jump every solopreneur has to go through to become an entrepreneur, because you have to communicate your vision. And this, by the way, is a computer science problem that has existed forever. It's called the value alignment problem, and it exists in a client situation. It exists in software development. It definitely exists in business. It exists in AI. What it means is that it is hard for us to fully communicate what's in our brain to another person. It's the value alignment problem. So that's why you're not getting out of AI what you want, or that's why you're not getting out of a team member what you want, is because you're not fully able to communicate exactly the value and the alignment between that value to the person who's going to execute it. So that's the biggest issue I see right now. Either people are going, I'm a very efficient user of ChatGPT, and I can tell you straight away that this person knows nothing, straight up. The second type of person is, it doesn't give me what I want, so I'm going to do it manually anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's just go down to some very good, and I'm going to learn something here too, I'm sure. What are the if someone's coming in, I don't even care what they're looking after or what they're looking into. What are some tools, tactics, tricks, hacks, things to be aware of when they're going and sitting down? Maybe they're opening up ChatGPT right now for the first time. And they're like going, I've been scared of this stuff. How do I go about it? How do I use it? What are some of the simple and powerful things people can do to better use this? I'm not going to use the word tool. This helpful augmentation.
Yeah. So in computer science, there's three main things that happen in any interaction. There's an input, there's a process that goes on with that input, and there's an output. So if you want to simplify this really simply to when you're on ChatGPT, what I would say is that if you're sitting in ChatGPT right now, you would say, well, I want you to do this. So what is the process? Okay. I want you to do this. I'm going to give you a bunch of inputs. Okay. And I would like the output to be like this. At the very minimum, that will give you a way better response than just saying, give me this.
So let's use an example.
Right. I want to write an email. Rather than say, write an email to my database to tell them I have a new episode coming out, I would rather say, this is episode number X, and the biggest points that we spoke about are this. And my guest has this kind of bio and credibility. And I want to write an email to my database who consists of these type of people. And I want to write it in a conversational tone and engaging way that allows me to communicate with them. And I would love them to be engaged with the email and take action at the end. You're giving it process, you're giving it context. Context is everything.
Right.
Context is everything.
Right.
That's why when you think about AI, there are two main numbers to think about, to be aware of. Now, ChatGPT is a type of AI like that. There's Claude, Gemini, there's so many different types of AI. The two main numbers, you think of it as long-term memory and short-term memory for any large language model. Long-term memory is the amount of data that it's trained on. So you'll hear people say, this is a large data model. This is a large model, and means it's trained on a lot of data. And what that means is it's a smart AI. It can make very good connections, neural connections. The next number, which is equally important, is short-term memory. When you give a prompt and you give it to the AI, how much does it remember in the short term to execute the prompt? So ChatGPT is a smaller context window, which means that anything above a certain point will start forgetting that. That's why when
over short or long term?
Over the long term. So because it's got a short term memory over the long term, whatever goes above that, it just starts to forget. So that's why when you start to ask over and over again, you get skewed results,
right?
Because it starts to forget.
Losing the context of the bigger picture. Yeah,
correct. So now, actually last week, Google just launched a 2 million context window size, which means you can put about 1.5 million words, 1.5 million words, and it'll remember that current short-term context window. That means you can put your manuscript into this AI and put every single transcript of your podcast in there, and then ask the AI to find where the podcast will fit into your manuscript and just layer it out. How long would that have taken a human or a bunch of humans or a team of humans to achieve by going through all your transcripts one at a time, finding where it fits into the book, and then putting it in? How long would that have taken? That right now is like a 10-minute task.
Wow. And what's the name of that particular AI?
It's
Google.
Gemini. Google.
Gemini.
Yeah.
But didn't ChatGPT update to a longer memory recently too?
No, they updated to a newer model.
Newer model.
Newer
Okay.
model called 4.0. So
Yeah.
which is means that it's smarter. So
Right.
that's the first number I spoke about.
Right.
So it's trained better. It gives you better results. It's more human like.
Right.
So it's trained better.
Right.
But the context size is still
Still.
smaller compared to like the Claude AI or Gemini AI and some of the
I
other.
found Claude really good.
Yeah, Claude's good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It spoke in a beautiful way.
Human way.
Yeah. Other side of this is, some of the issues of people trusting
Yeah.
data. Where is this coming from? Where is the data being, in earlier versions, I was messing around going, because I know a thing or two about some superfoods, right? So I'm like, give me the history on where the first cacao
Yeah.
tree was, and there was certain limitations that I would hit the ceiling on, and it couldn't harvest any more, pun intended. It couldn't harvest any more information.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't very impressed. And this was maybe, at this point, from an AI perspective, it was a billion years ago, but it was maybe a year ago or so, or 9 months ago. And now it's a little more advanced. So in terms of I think of it in terms of two things. Where is it getting its information? And then as you and I have talked about developing some stuff, there's guardrails in terms of, I don't want a certain AI going out and grabbing all kinds of information. I want to control that type of information based on what I want that particular AI to do.
Sure.
So there's two things. Number one, how do I trust where the information is coming from? Is it truly accessing this utopian amount of balanced information, as opposed to, is it being skewed by one side or the other? How do I know to trust it? And you're a perfect person to ask that, because you're an engineer and you understand these things. Listen, I don't know the answer. So how do we start to trust AI when they are created firstly by humans?
Yeah.
And have they put up like no access points to, like, just as a context, a far left, a far right? Not that I'm going to get into politics in this conversation, but if I put an AI, like I have Claude, or I have, not that they are, if I put rails on that and going, it's not going to access any more far right stuff or far left stuff or whatever it is, you're not going to find it, or it's going to skew it.
Yeah.
How do I trust these damn things?
Well, you have to first use it to find out where. That's why data is such an important part, and how for us food is so important and water is so important. Data and power is important for the AI, and if the data is skewed, the results are skewed. And you can tell. I'll show you a perfect example. Not for Americans, but for everyone else on the planet, we use the real English, which is in British English, right? It's written in a certain way. We use the right spellings. And if you put a prompt in British English, it still returns back in American English. Reason for that is most of the large language models have been trained on English that has been scraped from the World Wide Web. And most, like, I think 70% of the English World Wide Web is American English. So you can see the skew straight away in terms of how it is skewed and how it returns the information. Like that, I feel whoever invents the AI and trains the model will have bias. That will exist.
Just straight up.
Of course. I mean, if I'm inventing an AI and I haven't traveled, can you imagine what that would be like? If I'm inventing an AI and I never traveled outside my town, what would that be like? If I traveled outside my town and went around the country, what would that be like? If I went to inside my continent, what would that AI be like? If I went to other continents, and if I traveled the whole world and actually really had conversations with all these different people, what AI would I build? There'll always be bias, right? There'll always be one side or the other. And it'll be interesting to see how this policing is going to work. Because should we trust the governments to police this? Because we don't have a good history as humans and governments and leaders of doing the right thing when it comes to these things. We don't have any track record of that.
Right. Well, we have the track record of the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. So what we right now have a conversation about are not trusting the AI. We are in no moral position to have that conversation. Technically, if we step back and look at the whole picture, we might actually have a chance if we are not involved in the situation. And you'll see this and you'll notice this from ecosystems. As soon as a human fucks with the ecosystem, what happens?
Totally.
It's almost like we should just
leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that there's no more obvious than that. You know, when we use it to our advantage, we follow ecosystem rules, i.e. permaculture, regenerative ag, like that kind of things. Yeah. When we follow those things. But I always use this example of like, look at Chernobyl. We destroyed, we killed, we hurt, and we can't, as humans, we can't live there anymore, right? But if you go back and they've had drones with cameras that go back, you know what's thriving? Nature. And there's animals back there, and plants are exploding through cracks of buildings, and they left it alone. And in the face of one of the biggest human debacles, it still finds a way to thrive or to exist, right? So that's the point. So that being said, again, how do we then trust ChatGPT? How do I then go? And I know, like, if you're just asking it, you know, what are the best botanical anti-inflammatories? That's an easy kind of way to use it, and give me DIYs to create salves or tinctures or whatever. This is a cool kind of way to use it. But if you do that, here's the weird thing, dude. If you do that same search on regular Google, you don't find that for a long time because all the medical stuff, it's already co-opted.
Yeah, the pharmaceuticals who have paid for all the SEO links.
Yes. So now or it's like a WebMD that's like that's contraindicated, and there's all these warnings. Yeah. So the world is moving. I don't Google search anymore. I use ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was seeing right away, going, holy shit, this is going to move to, like, you're not going to do normal searches anymore. Yeah. You're going to use AI.
Right.
So again, your answer to it is can you 100% trust it? Or do you think it's going to work itself out in the wash? Meaning, like, it's going to be slightly skewed based on the who's creating it, essentially. But the AI also is sentiently evolving, if that's a word.
Yeah, no, but I think the point here is that if you are biased when you're entering it in, it's going to give you a biased response back. So if you're going to say, give me this, and in the way you ask it, there's already bias, then you're going to get bias back. Right. Now, if you're going to say, okay, you won't make this for me, but I have all these research and papers and stuff like that where I'll show you where it is. So go look at those in particular. And now, based on that, you give me that stuff. Then again, that you've given it bias by saying, don't look at anything else, just look at this stuff. So in every instance, there's going to be, and which is not actually a bad thing, which to your point at the start, when you spoke about tool, it's like about the human value, right?
Yeah.
So we're actually amplifying our impact by how we use it. So the question is not, can we trust it? The question is, can we trust ourselves?
Right. That's the biggest question.
I think we can all do the right thing in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's why I've always been a Batman fan since I was a child, because he was the only superhero that didn't have powers.
Right.
And he's the only one in the Justice League that does the right thing irrespective of how hard it is. Superman has all this conscience and all this other stuff, and this guy will just pull the plug because it's the right thing to do. And I feel that right now, based on the information we have right now, it's the only thing we can do is do the right thing with the information we have in this moment and not start to worry about, do I have all the information? Just do.
I have a new AI for you to create.
Yeah.
It's called the Batman AI.
Yeah, it would be very cool. It would
And
be
literally train it to do the right thing. That's the sole purpose of it.
That's cool.
Shit. Because do we even have it anymore?
That's cool.
Let's talk a little bit about the limitations of AI from a broader perspective that not a lot of people are talking about. And that is, there is a physical nature to AI. There's a physical nature to data storage. There's a very, very physical nature to all of this data, period, right? There's a physical nature to storing energy. There's all of this stuff that Bitcoin, perfect example, right? People don't even realize that for years people are running around the planet. These Bitcoin miners are constantly looking for energy sources to house the amount of mechanisms and machines to keep the data, right? To hold the data, to transfer the data. Same thing here, man. Right? So AI aside, we need more data. There's just huge amounts of data. And so there's a limitation. There's chips, right? There's circuits. There's like all these things. Do you think that as fast as it's expanding, do we have the capability currently to keep up to the energy demands? And where is the ethics around that? I personally know there's solutions for it. They're not implemented quite yet, but I will show you off air.
Yeah.
I will show you
I
shit.
know.
I will show you as of the last 2 days.
Really?
The last 2 days, I will show you things that I can't show, but will make the hair on your arms stand up because of clean energy tech advancements in real world, right? So I know those things exist. And those people have already contacted my friends, right? Because it's an issue. Where do you sit with this stuff? There is an ethic around this. There is a energy demand that we are just screaming out for. I think we divorced ourselves in the process, oil and oil dependency and abuse of energy and all of mining and all of this is fucking horrible. We divorced so many amazing technologies in the early 1900s, and hopefully that resurgence is coming back. So there's a ethical, moral dilemma on the physical nature of the expression of things like Bitcoin
Right.
and AI and things like that. So how do you like where you like?
Well,
I
that's
love,
what. Yeah,
yeah,
that's why I said this before about can we trust the governments to police AI, and I don't think that's the solution because we have trusted the governments to police our natural resources and they've not done a good job. And when you think about how things have changed over the years, when the people in power are going to lose power, they create these rules so they don't lose power,
it's so
right? And just even notice something as simple as marijuana right now in the United States.
yeah.
There are people in jail right now for marijuana when you can go to New York and as like a 7-Eleven and just buy whatever you want in as much quantity as you want. And in there are some shops that you'll give you even that coffee card and say after the fifth one you'll get this free. And there are still people in jail for that
Right. They haven't let them out.
because the government did not find a way to make money from weed until now, where they taxed it, and that's how they're making the money. And now everyone's happy about it, right? Same thing is with power. It is, of course, it's a problem. Of course, we can see it. We know that the way we're currently doing things and the government's allowing us to do things that way, we know that that's the way that we are, going to lose. We're killing the planet. But there are still clowns who take an ice ball into fucking parliament to show that we still get cold temperature and think there's no global warming. It's absolute bullshit, right? But again, to your point, the media is affecting all these people. Like we could show someone absolute fact, but if that breaks down their belief system that they believed all these years, they're going to go into a mental breakdown. Why don't they believe these things? They don't believe it because their brain doesn't know how to take that all.
They can't do that in a matrix moment. They will violently defend their limiting point of view.
Yes.
And
And that's the problem.
And that's the problem. I mean, you could take that same thing and put it into every major issue going on in the world right now.
Well, the fact that you already have clean energy, we already have it right now,
Yeah.
and it's not being used,
Yeah.
tells us enough about who is the culprit
Yeah.
in this situation.
And that's just who I know.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
Right.
that's just who I know.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like these things, we already know the suppression of so many things. The horrible latter life of Tesla.
Yeah.
Back in the day when he was still one of the biggest inventors, change makers of our current time, still, right? And just destroyed the man. And so it's that same. Here's my optimism, though. Implosion. Because you've divorced it and you live on power and and profit, probably mostly power, it is 180 degrees against the laws of this universe. So I believe that natural implosion will happen and is happening. Now, I know that my friend Chris has been contacted by major governments, the highest, right? Because the implosion is already happening.
Yeah.
The implosion is happening here in California. They don't have enough power. They mandate electric cars when they can't even keep the grid alive with their current models. The implosion, I know for a fact that major monopoly power companies are leaving cities in California. They cannot conduct business. Now, their government's probably stepping in, giving them subsidies and all of this stuff, but it's an unsustainable model.
Right.
It is imploding
Yeah.
because they are not following these rules and these laws of nature and clean and
Yeah.
whatever else. So I believe that that is going to happen, will happen, is happening. That's where the optimism comes in.
Yeah.
You know, I think that having these conversations, educating people on this just, you know, think about it. Like I had probably more resistance to the internet than I do now with AI because I'm like, I just couldn't get my head around it. Like what, 1993, when my really good friend sat me down. He was a computer engineer, and he goes, "Watch this." He brought me on the internet. I was like, "What the hell is this?" You know, 93, and all of a sudden, you know, this is just part of our life. And now this AI thing is here. So,
I mean, just think about that, right? I mean, see how we invented machines, we invented electricity, then we invented now computers, and then now intelligence. But we've always gone after the more profitable things. Did we solve any of the other things using any of these things? No, we didn't. We still have the dichotomy of having hunger and obesity on the same planet.
right.
It's absolutely horrifying to even think that today I just shat into toilet water that people would die to drink. Clean water.
Yeah.
And
we're just flushing it every day.
we're just fucking flushing it every day. We're not realizing how privileged we are. And as a result, what is really fascinating is the physical comforts that we have are being negated by the mental discomfort that we're having to deal with. I'm so glad that's recorded, because that didn't come from me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's this in lies the place where I don't know what, you know, how do we not pursue these solutions? How do we not try to, you know, again, I don't want to be flippant with the word, but like every day I ask myself, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? I have to, or else I'm mentally not okay, right? I need to do it on a consistent basis. And every time it just keeps coming up, like water, power, food, shelter, also individual sovereignty. And that is also a choice by choice.
Yes.
That's you drinking good water today. You're gaining agency of yourself.
Right.
As opposed to not drinking water, not eating fresh food. For those of us that can choose that, that's giving your power away, because it's not allowing you to live in your greatest way. So now you're actually adding on your own blockades to then stop you from pursuing more. That's the whole basis of my SuperLife book. I just want people to don't focus so much on the details.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Eat well, take care of yourself, exercise, sleep well. Not so that you can have 6 abs.
Have I told you, did I ever talk to you about this head chef of mine that we were cutting 25 kilos of cabbage? Did I ever tell you the story?
No.
I will forever remember Dan.
You have all your fingers. So
I mean, Dan was the head chef, and I was training to be a chef. So at the time, you just have to cut as much as you can, right? It's just, you learn to use the knife, and so 25 kilos of cabbage, we're making sauerkraut.
That's
and
a lot
he
of
was,
cabbage.
and so we were talking, and in the conversation, he said to me something I'll never forget. He's like, Ronsley, if you're working on a problem that you can solve in your lifetime, you're thinking too small. And I've not seen Dan in ages, and like I have lost touch with him. But when this AI thing came onto me, that's who I thought of. And I'm like, maybe I'm supposed to work on this, and maybe I'm not going to be around to see the solution. Maybe it's just me walking along the beach, picking up one starfish that might be dying and chucking it back into the river and making that difference. And just knowing that at some point there'll be a miracle that will allow all those one effort or those reps, and it'll keep accumulating and make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only thing we can do, right? And we are in such a great position to be able to give that energy because, life has been so kind to us.
Yeah. Amen to that. And keep in mind that action is really good for us. In that acute action, when I save a fly that's caught in my yurt, I feel good. Easy to people to kill these. I'm not going to be the guy, other than the tick I pulled off of me from my dog the other day. Like, you're not going to, but you know what I'm saying? Like that act is good for you. It's good for the starfish. And in the grand scheme of things, dude, we can only see so much. We can only perceive so much. So we are only and beautifully this opportunity.
Yeah.
So what kind of opportunity do we want to be, and what do we want to contribute to? And just going for it, I find is so gifting. Whether it happens to our full actualization of what we understand or not, the pursuit of it.
Yeah. I mean, when I was, again, another gentleman so I started the first podcasting conference in Australia in 2013, and I had never run an event for even 5 people before. So I went from 0 to this thing, and I was freaking out. And I remember this mentor of mine said to me, the goal is not as important as the person you become trying to achieve that goal. I was like, oh, thank you so much.
Right.
Because my being was struggling with the idea of success when it didn't have to be.
Right.
And that was one small perspective shift. And I want to encourage your audience to think of this, because we keep thinking that we got to do stuff, push, it got to be harder, otherwise we won't achieve. But if you think about the biggest differences that have ever been made, there's like a perspective shift, a small shift that releases everything. And it's not about doing more. It's not about pushing. It's not about moving things uphill. It's about us stepping back, looking at it from a perspective, and hopefully raising our vibration a little bit so we can see the same event from a different perspective.
Totally.
Right? And I feel that's where these conversations are so powerful, because not only do we share the conversation here, we're sharing our energies, and together we're vibrating at this different energy, trying to have a conversation and hopefully get it to a different plane.
Totally.
Right? It is such a beautiful act. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, brother. One last question, just out of curiosity. Say what you want. What are some insights or gifts you received from Gary V? Because you've been working.
Oh man, you just gave me goosebumps, because I've been having this whole reaction to something he said to me at NASDAQ a few days ago. And he said something like this, and he was so passionate about it. He's like, I wish I could invent a vaccine where I shove that into you, Ronsley, and it removes your insecurity and just puts belief into you, because you will just be a different human being. And that didn't just hit me in the gut. It hit me in the nuts, in the heart, in the chest, in the throat. He kind of like, with one sentence, he just unlocked all my chakras or whatever, because I could feel it like inside. And if you talk to my friends, they'll say, well, she doesn't have a confidence problem.
Right.
But if you talk to my wife, she'll tell you that she's been saying this to me for ages. Please see the world the way I see you. And I've just been so lucky and so blessed and so privileged and fortunate, I feel, to share energies with you, other people like this. It's just, and I think Gary's an example, but I get these gifts from people that walk around the street. You know, they just say something and it's like,
where did that come from?
oh, it's like the universe had a message and that was the messenger. Thank you. I needed that.
Yeah.
So Gary has done this so often to me. It's just one statement. He doesn't think he's saying anything special, but he's found the thing that is the prick. And he's like, don't hide that. Just remove it.
Right.
That's been...
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And thanks for sharing your wisdom and your energy today. It's always a pleasure. Love you.
Thank you. I love you too, brother.